Chuck, let's get this following thing out of the way. Yes, you served for a Democratic president, but, and this was, honestly, I was surprised to be reminded of this. You did not endorse Hillary Clinton in 2016. You sat on the sidelines publicly. So tell me why no on Hillary Clinton 4 years ago and why yes on Joe Biden today.
Well, first of all, Chuck, thanks. I'm a Republican. I've always been a Republican, and I hope there'll be a Republican Party that I can continue to support. But today, it is a different world than 2016, Chuck, as you all know, and you've been talking about. And 2016, I just didn't have a role in it and didn't take a role in it, didn't take a position. This time I am, because I am concerned about the future of this country, what's been happening the last 3.5 years, the incompetency, the corruption, the dangerous erosion of our alliances, of our allies, of our trade. And that's why I've come off the bench and still a Republican, but I'm not the only Republican supporting Joe Biden.
And what's the case that you would make to fellow Republicans that they should trust Joe Biden when Donald Trump is arguing, okay, you may like him personally, but it's AOC, it's Bernie Sanders, it's Elizabeth Warren that are going to be pulling the economic strings. So what would be your case to a Republican that, you know, could be persuaded but is nervous about some parts of the Democratic Party?
Well, first, Chuck, I would remind everyone that we are each individuals, regardless if you're a politician, a leader, products of our past. Joe Biden has a very clear record in the United States Senate and as vice president to President Obama for 8 years. So you look at an individual's past. What has he done? What has he believed? How has he voted? What actually has he accomplished? What has been his position on issues? Joe Biden's not going to change. Obviously, if he's elected, he's going to have to govern. He's going to have to listen to people, and he does this very well. I saw him do it in the Senate. I saw him do it in the administration. He listens. He makes judgments on all of that, but he's fundamentally who he is and where he came from. And all you need to do is just check his record. So I would say to my Republican friends who are not quite sure about him, he is not going to be a tool for the wacky left or the right. He is going to be Joe Biden. He's always been Joe Biden. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. You agree or not agree. But that's I think the strongest case. This guy just didn't drop in out of outer space. He's been a leader in this country for a long time. And that's a pretty good sign of what kind of a leader he would be, what kind of a president he would be.
You know, it's interesting to watch the current senator that sits in your seat, Ben Sasse, because you get the sense that there's probably a lot of alignment between how the two of you think about Washington, about, you know, what government should be. I mean, you could see it there. There's maybe some generational differences. I'm not going to say you guys are in alignment, but he clearly stopped short in how critical. He's been critical on social media, but he stopped short in how he carries it out. What's your take on this situation and how he's straddled this line that clearly he's decided to walk?
Well, as a matter of fact, I spoke with Ben Sasse last week, had a long conversation with him, and we talked about the presidential election. We talked about the Republican Party. And one of the things that I said to Ben is after this election, Ben, and I think Joe Biden is going to be elected. I hope he is. I'm going to do everything I can to help him get there, and I think he will be. But I said, Ben, the Republican Party is going to have to be reborn. There is no Republican Party. It's a Trump party. And unfortunately, the Republican Party has enabled Trump to get away with things that no one would have conceived allowing any president to do in the past. And I said to Ben, you are going to be one of those leaders that can reshape and bring the party back. That's what I hope he will do. And that's what I hope the Republican Party will do. And be a different kind of party, be the kind of party, at least that I joined. And the first time I voted was in 1968 in Vietnam, an absentee ballot. The party that I joined, and I knew why I joined it, and the party that I represented in the United States Senate. So I get Ben's political realities and where he's got to be, but I do look to Ben Sasse and others like him to really be the future leaders of putting a new Republican Party together for the 21st century.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.